Hi guys, welcome to another episode of T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And in today's episode, we're working on part 3 of Brute Farce, my 2000 Dodge Ram 2500 4-wheel drive V10. And what are we doing? Well, we're finally addressing the body rot on this truck. Why? Because it's a really good truck and I want to keep it around and I want it to look a little nicer. So, we do have some rot in the cab corner down into the rocker. We're going to take care of that with most of this replacement panel from LMC truck. We don't have to use the whole thing because it's not necessary, and there's other pieces in this that we could probably use elsewhere if the time ever came. Then we're going to address the wheel arch. All these second gen Rams usually rust around the arch here. So we're going to replace most of that again with most of this panel, and we're going to have to do some fabrication to go ahead and get some of the rust out of the inner fender or the inner splash tub, whatever you want to call it. We've got a little patch to do to the door, and as a bonus, I'm going to show you guys how to take a dent out with a football, especially in a place that you can't get at it with a hammer and dolly. Now, I did try this method out on the bed and it worked tremendously well, and we do have quite a dinger on the right front fender that we need to take care of. So we're going to start with the bed and let's get to it. Well, all right, I am far from an expert when it comes to body work, but the reason why I'm doing this is, one, I want the truck look nicer, and number two, if I can do it, you guys can absolutely do it. So we're going to start out right here, but the first thing we have to do is go ahead and grab our grinder with the sanding disc on it and go around all this rot to see where the clean metal is, because we don't want to cut it short and leave some rotted metal into our new panel. So let's get this hooked up and let's get grinding. Now that we know where our rust ends, we're pretty much right below this contour where it comes back down flat. Now, I don't want to cut on that contour because if we're welding here, we're going to warp it a little bit and it's going to be really hard to get that shape back. So when we do cut this panel, we're going to go right in between these two creases. So the crease where it goes up and the curve where it comes down, we're going to come in here right in the center, and that'll be a lot easier to smooth because it's a much bigger area to deal with. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of test fit our piece here. Get the gas door out of the way, and that gives us a pretty good idea of where this is going to go. So, we can go about this a couple of ways. We can run screws through this, run it right into our metals, but what I'm going to do first, because we don't have to replace this part of the bed, I'm going to get rid of this right here, and it'll give us a little more variation on lining our creases up here, and we'll keep this in the back because this part does need to be replaced. So I'm going to get our zip wheel and we're going to get rid of this chunk here, and we're just generally going to trim this up a little bit, get it out of the gas door area, So we'll probably bring it up, and then once we get rid of the excess metal that we're not going to use, I'm going to clamp it to our bedside, and then we're going to make one cut between this piece of steel and the bedside. So I'm going to grab our angle grinder. Okay, now we've got a much better area to set this in. So there we go. Now what we can do is we can come in, I'm going to clamp this, I might screw it in anyway, but we're going to clamp this in place. I actually do got to fix a little whoopsie right here. Let's do that quick. So I'll grab my hammer and dolly. We're just going to fix that little whoopsie right there. There we go. A little area to pinch. There. We got that straightened out. I'm going to grab a couple clamps. We're going to get that in here, and we're going to make probably a cut right here. We're going to bring it up, and we're going to bring it down. So, let me grab some clamps. Alright, now the way we're going to fit this panel in is we're going to do the layover and cut method, where we just got our panel laying over what we're going to replace. We're not going to cut on the edge. We're going to dive in, and we're going to cut around it. Now what that'll do is give us the width of our cutting wheel as a welding gap, which should work just perfect. And then we'll come down and around. So when you cut around, it should lay in right into the piece that you're taking out, because you're cutting both of them the exact same way. It will probably tighten up this upper gap a bit, because this will go up just a touch, but only the thickness of the sheet metal itself. So the nice thing is, if I screw this up, I've got another panel, but we'll see how it works. Now that we got the outer skin out of the way, I'm going to show you why these trucks start to rust. This is a very pliable, like foam insulation that Chrysler put between the inner fender and the outer fender, probably notably to reduce like oil canning or just kind of hollow sounding when you go over bumps. And well, it soaks up moisture and then it begins to rust. Now, you can see that our inner wheel tub isn't great. So, we're probably going to have to make a patch panel to go in here and get a radius out here. Now, does it need to be there? For the strength of the bedside, yes, it absolutely needs to be there. And another reason, this catches a lot of stuff the tires swing around. Now, the one thing with these second gen ramps is they come with inner plastic wheel liners. So conceivably, you could get rid of this and just keep your inner wheel liner as long as you coat the inside of the bed. It'd probably be fine, but one thing you're going to lack is structural rigidity in the wheel arch, because without this there, you're going to be able to push the wheel arch right in. So I'm going to kind of ponder a little bit on how I want to do this, because we'll have to make a flat piece that the end is peened over. We've got a couple areas that stick out, but what I'll probably do is cut this out and then go ahead and start making templates. But in the meantime, we can check the fit of our patch panel, which I need to actually take the hammer and kind of beat up our pinch welds here. I ended up just cutting it. See, pinch weld. We'll get a better look at the fit now. Yeah, I think once we get the pinch weld and everything out of the place, out of our way there, this will fit in real nice. So I need to do an inventory of cutting wheels, because I realized I bought the wrong ones for the size arbor I have on my angle grinder, and I need to see what I have for my big grinder. And we can come in here and probably cut all this out. Yeah, this is a 2-piece inner and outer tub. So maybe I'll just cut it out for now, don't yell at me, and see if I can't order an inner tub, because this is actually 2 pieces. You have the inner, that's the wheelhouse going into the bed, and you have the outer here that's a structure. It's just a bunch of pinch welds that hold it to the inner. So I think I'm just going to cut this out before the pinch weld, or the spot welds here, and we'll just get rid of it for now so we can lay in our outer panel. And I'll do some research if I can get an inner tub. I'm sure I can. And for now, I'll just put the plastic splash guards in that actually come all the way out to the wheel lip, so we don't have to worry about stuff getting thrown up on the inside. And I will prime and paint the inside of the bed, which will actually help with corrosion anyway, because we'll be able to get in there. So I'm going to get this out of there, and then we'll go back to test fitting our panel, and I'll do some research, see if I can't get an inner structure. All right, we got the inner structure out. You can see she's a little floppy, so that's going to go in a pile to make templates. Now I got the closer looking at this, and it's actually just the inner wheelhouse that goes into the bed that's separate. This and that inner structure is the entire inner structure of the side of this bed. So we're going to have to make something. Now, that being said, I'm going to clean up these edges, because I cut it right up tight to where the spot welds are, where this metal overlaps. So it's right up tight there. That'll give us a straight cut later. And kind of what I want to do is I want to get the outer panel on first, so I can treat the back of it, and then we can come in and lay in our new inner wheel tub later down the road. So I'm going to clean all this up around here. We're going to paint that, and get it so it's not going to rot any further. We're going to paint all this, and then you can see there's a little movement on the bed, and I did cut all of the inner structure out. Back here, I just cut through it. I can re-weld it so we at least have some structure down here at our main body lines. So, first things first, we're going to come in. I'm just going to clean off the edges with the wheel here, get these sharp edges gone. And then I'm going to go after this with a wire brush. And then we're going to clean up the edges on both the bedside and our patch panel. Alright, I'm going to hit this with, I've already hit it with one coat of paint. I'm just using some rough stop paint, kind of get a couple good coats on here. That way, we don't have to worry about this material inside. There we go. Now, we can go and lay in our outer panel. I've got everything cleaned up. I filed the backside. We don't have any stringers, so we can set our panel in. And if you guys remember when I was building the checker, I've got these body clamps that use a bar on the backside to help hold the panel into place. So slide it through, get our bar through here. There we go. And we'll get it clamped lightly. Get one on the back. There we go. Make sure our body line is correct. You probably have to massage it a little bit just to get everything to line up. But it looks pretty good so far. Do have a little larger gap than I want here, but that's not a big deal. Let's see. I might come in here, remove this, and we'll take a little bit out right here so we can tighten that up a little bit and get it right where we want it. Yeah, so if we just kind of nibble a little bit of that off, we should be good to go. So let's throw a grinding wheel on there. There we go. That should give us the room I want. So we will slide our mounts around, our clamps around a little bit. everything right where I want it. Or take a little more off the bottom there. But first I'm going to put one more clamp in just so we know we're lined up. Just a touch here. There we go. There. That should work. Excellent. So now we'll get our welder out and we're going to tack here, here, and then we're going to work our way up, kind of working around the panel and start getting it tacked into place, making sure that none of our metal is going to try to butt and piss out like that. So we don't want it to pucker out, so we do need a little bit of a gap, because when you're welding it, it's going to heat up quick, it's going to expand, and it'll want to pucker if you have it butted right tight together. So I might come in here and just give a little bit, but first we're going to get this set in and get the back locked in. That way when we're working up, we can still play with this upper part. So, time to get the welder out. And, like always, on a fuel-injected vehicle or something with a computer, disconnect your negative battery terminal before you start welding. Alright, well we've got our new patch panel tacked in, and it's actually fairly strong. I mean, it's still flexing the bedside of the bed without this inner structure in there, but for now we'll just put the splash tub in to keep stuff from flying up and hitting the inside of sheet metal. But now it's the fun part. I gotta sit down and I just gotta hammer out all these welds. Of course, when you're tack welding a panel in, especially something this big, you want to move around a lot. You don't want to focus in one area. You want to, front, back, middle, kind of just work your way around so you don't put too much heat in one area. So I'm going to sit down and we're going to knock all this stuff out, and then we'll come back, grind our tacks down, and before we do any body work on it, one thing I want to note is back here where the patch panel meets the bedside. These Amazon panels aren't exactly the greatest stamping, so you're probably going to have to work doing some forming. I did kind of have to massage back here to get it as close as we can, and there's going to be a little bit of a blemish that we'll have to just smooth out with some body filler. We're not talking a lot of body filler, thankfully, but once we get all this tacked, we get it ground down, I can go in with a hammer and dolly, smooth this area out to make it a nicer transition from the patch to the bed, and then a skim coat of body filler to make it flow all the way back, which I got to do anyway from pulling this dent out and dollying some of the other dents. So there's probably going to be, you know, just a skim coat of body filler in this general area. Nothing thick. You don't want to go super thick, but just to kind of help cover up my hammer marks, stuff like that. So I'm going to get hammering on this, and I'll get back to you when we're grinding. All right, I already started grinding on this. We've got our top weld pretty much smoothed down. There's a couple pinholes here and there that I'm going to come back in with the welder and touch up. And that's one thing when you're doing stuff like this, when you're laying down your tack welds, every now and then you're just going to have a little pinhole like that. And I know when you're doing this, you're going to get excited. You're going to want to knock that weld down and see how smooth it looks. But just like when you're welded into place, you want to move around. Keep the grinder moving. You know, don't put a ton of pressure on it. There's just a small spot where I started to get a little too much heat in there, and you'll see that right away. But that'll definitely warp your panel. So, moving the grinder around and just taking your time is going to require less finish work over your piece of material that you're working on. So, I'm alternating between my angle grinder with a flat wheel on it and my die grinder with a sanding disc on it, just kind of working back and forth, seeing what takes what, and you know, just kind of getting everything smoothed out. So I'm going to switch back to my angle grinder because it's got a more forgiving pad on it, so I can contour things better. Alright, we got everything ground down, but our next step's going to be is just wiping it off. Get some acetone here. Get all this crap off. I went ahead and took the paint off back into this area that I repaired earlier. And I did try to come back here and shape it a little bit. I can't really get my hammer behind it, so I was putting a dolly in the back and trying to flatten this out a little more, but that's actually going to take some filler to complete. So give it another wipe. There we go. There. Now you get a look at how much better that actually looks. Now, there's going to need to be a little filler here. I can feel just a slight dip just from a little bit of warpage. A skim coat up here, which is not a big deal. And we're going to probably start here. I'm going to sand this down probably a little more. Get some more of this off, and then we're gonna just lay a light coat from here to here. So I'm gonna take some more of this off, and then we'll wipe it back down, and we'll get our body filler out, get it mixed up, and kind of get this seam here, all this stuff, and just make it look pretty good. mix up some filler here. Probably should have put gloves on, but that's what we have acetone for. That way I can find all the cuts in my hands. Alright. Now we can let this set. What's their cure time? $15 to 20 minutes. We're going to seal this back up. So we're going to let this set, and then I'll come back and we'll sand it, and we'll see just how it came out. So, not too bad, not a lot of rondo. I'll mix them up later when we do the half corner, and then finish this part down here. But once we get this laid out and sanded out, we can start prepping it. I also see a little ding there. Maybe I could kind of tap this out. Better. Alright. 15 minutes, we'll come back and sand this. Okay, well, we've got the bedside roughed in. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to hit it with a epoxy and a sealer to just leave it, because when we go paint the truck, we're going to be sanding all that off anyway and doing final body work. But I'm going to move on to the cab corner, and I've already trimmed the part we're not going to use out of it. So instead of replacing the entire panel all the way up to here, we're just going to do down here without wrapping around the back, because this is all clean steel. So we've got it coming up into the rocker, which I do have a rocker behind me to replace that piece, and I've got it clamped on. So what I'm going to do this time, instead of doing a dive cut and cutting through both pieces at the same time, because I really want this to fit, versus the bedside, which fit fine, but it's a fairly flat surface. This has got some compound curves and everything going on here. So I'm just going to hold it up tight, and we're just going to scribe a line. That's going to be where we cut this panel. There we go. So now we've got a line there. We're going to run a line up the back side. There we go. So now we can pop our panel off, because we have everything that we need there. There. This has already been cut and cleaned up, ready to go, other than a little bit of paint removal. Now before I make these cuts, I'm going to go after the spot weld. So there's probably 3-4 in the door jamb. And then we're going to attack what's left down here, which ain't a whole lot. Maybe a couple up there. So let's find my battery. And start hammering through these spot welds. There we go. I'm going to turn that insulation and stuff it up in there. I didn't dive my wheel very deep into the metal because I didn't want to cut that insulation. Now, this inner structure is rusty. I'm not going to do anything about it because, well, we would be so far into this damn truck to replace all this stuff in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to attack it with some hammers, a wire brush, all that stuff, and we're going to do like we did the inside of the wheel well, and we're going to hit it with a rust stop. That should conceivably keep this from getting any worse. We're going to knock any of the loose stuff off, get any of the stuff that's going to hold moisture out of here, like any of the insulation, stuff like that. And then we could work on cleaning what's left of this rocker off the pinch weld. And once we get that cleaned up, we may be able to just lay this in and see how our fit is so far. Now I cut it knowing that I'm probably going to have to do some grinding. So we're probably not going to have to do a whole lot of grinding, which will make this go a lot smoother. But before we get carried away on final fitment, we got to get rid of the rest of this rusty rocker. So I'm just going to kind of attack this stuff with my pick hammer. And get all this rust out of here. I might actually go in with a death wheel and knock this inner structure out. Do you need it? Mainly it's just inside impact structure, and also it doesn't do a whole lot of bracing because it doesn't actually hit or touch the inside of the outer skin there. So I'm just going to go in and bust a lot of this stuff out of there. Alright, so we've got the rest of our rocker and cab corner off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here with a flat wheel and clean off the rest of this flange for the pinch weld. Then we can lay our piece into place and then we can start setting up for our rocker repair. And I might actually fix this inner structure with some more of that rocker that I've got sitting there. So I'm going to just start doing some general rust cleanup and then we'll get back into it. All right, now that we've got all dug in here, I actually had to take out a piece of the rocker structure. You can see our inner rockers rotted out. That's something I'm going to address later because I could do the inner rocker from underneath the truck. Now, I got all this stuff cut out of here, got all that rust out of the way. So basically, we're going to need an inner rocker from about here to here, but we got to replace this structure. It was absolutely rotted. That's the outer. There's pieces of it. Well, basically, all that rust was this inner structure. What I've discovered is that this truck had taken a hit right here. And I can witness that from this cut line here and a cut here. And then it was repaired. It had a new structure put in, a new outer rocker, and probably didn't have this cab corner done. That being said, the reason why I know that, other than those cuts, is the rocker structure was glued to the inner rocker and the outer rocker was glued to the rocker structure. So this is a pretty simple shape. I'm just going to cut out a piece of steel. This is 8 3/4 inches. I'm going to weld it in. We're going to beat it around, get it in there quick and dirty so we can lay on our cab corner. That is, so far the fit's pretty good. We've got to do some slight grinding to get it perfect. But once we get this done, we can lay that in and then we can fill in probably that much of the rocker. So I'm going to cut some steel. All right, we got the inner structure in. Now it's time to start cleaning this up a bit. I've test fit my panel on, and I had to tweak it a little bit. Anytime you have an aftermarket panel, you have to work it a little. So this had to come out to get it to sit properly. So if we slide that up and on, you can see that our gap gets bigger back there. So we need to grind a little out of here to help suck this up. So that's what we're gonna do. See how our gap's gotten a lot closer now in the back? So I'm going to go to my scribe line here, because I did cut below it, and we're just going to grind up to that. All right, I think we're ready to tack this into place. It's gonna take quite a bit of time laying out each tack to get this right, but it looks like our rocker's gonna line up. This is sitting where it needs to sit. we can adjust this. This is where it needs to be. So I'm just gonna go in and we're gonna buzz it in. Alright, we got our final piece of this puzzle sorted out. And we got our chunk of rocker. That sits in there like so. Obviously when I go to tack it in, we'll adjust it and have it in there just perfect. But there is this contour coming into it, matches up pretty good. This one over here is a little different, so I'm going to start to tack this in. So I'm going to tack probably through here, up here, and then I'm going to tack down here in this corner and up here, and then I'm going to go at it with the body hammer and try to kind of shape it so we don't have to fill it with Bondo. So let's get this mess kind of untangled. And let's get to jamming this thing in. Alright, well, we got a bunch of new steel in. Pretty much got rid of the rust right down here. There's still some work that needs to be done. Kind of get these transitions straightened out. But I'm happy with the fit of the cab corner. I'm happy with the bedside. I don't know how far I'll actually get on this. I gotta head out tomorrow night to do a load before Thanksgiving. I might just fog this quick, even if I don't get everything finished tacked and finish body work before I throw a primer on. I might just throw a quick coat of primer over this, tacks and everything, just to keep it from rusting. And then when I come back for my next trip, we just go after it with a wire brush and finish our welding. That's one of the things that when you're working on a vehicle that you drive to work, you got to have contingency, things going on. I could have left this and not cut it out and replaced it, but we'll see. Definitely don't want to leave either one of my cars sit down at the shop while I'm gone, so this truck's going to have to do it. And it would have been much further ahead, except when I pulled it into the shop, I blew a brake line, and replacing that brake line turned into doing all the brake lines in the truck just so I don't have to do it again. So that kind of ate up most of yesterday. But I'm going to take a break, kind of collect my thoughts, and we're going to see where we're going to go from here. Oh, all right. I decided to go a little further last night. We finished tacking it. I ground it down. I hit it with some filler, and then I went ahead and sanded that down. So for now, I'm just going to hit it with a quick couple coats of primer. And then probably the cab corner here we'll just hit with a light coat of blue. Just to seal everything in. Keep the elements from getting to it. And then we can, when we come back through and do the final body work on the truck, any whoopsies or anything will all get straightened out then when I had the whole side of the truck with everything off of it to go at it with a nice straight sanding block and get everything perfect. For now, we're just getting rid of the rust so it doesn't get worse, and we want to protect what we put in. I'm actually going to mask a line. There we go. And we can hit it with the primer. Just do some light coats, get it all covered up, and then we can start laying it in. Alright, we've got our primer laid on there. I threw two different kinds. We've got a sealer on it now to just kind of protect it. I'm going to go over just the cab corner and rocker. I'm not going to deal with the bed because it needs quite a bit of finish work, and if I put like gloss paint on it, it's just going to look even worse because it is a little bit ripply. It's definitely going to take some metal work to make, well, body work in general to make all that work. So we're just going to hit this with some color, and I've got some intense blue, should match the truck pretty well. So let's see. That lays on thick. All right, we'll let the first coat kind of dry there, and then we'll probably hit it with at least two more coats to get it to look pretty decent. Well, I'll say that looks 10 times better. Now, if you get up close, you could see sanding marks, you could see a little bit of unevenness. And that's just because I laid a very light coat of filler over it to just kind of make sure there weren't any pinholes, nothing like that. And I smoothed it out really quickly, just to get it covered because I'm kind of running on a real truncated timetable and I wanted to get this finished. Now, it doesn't matter how bad the bodywork looks because, well, it looks better than that did, for sure. Now there's a couple other things I've got to do yet. There's a lot of finished body work that needs to happen with these repairs. I need to finish up here. I didn't completely weld it. I was kind of running on empty last night. But we've got the biggest parts where stuff's not going to get flung up in here and rot it all out. Like I said, we're going to need to take some actual body work. When I go to do it, we're going to hit it with a much more pliable filler. The stuff I got was pretty rough to work with. Get something a little better. And then we can lay on our filler and work it out with a DA. Same goes for the side of the bed. So we'll jump back in here in a little bit after this cures and kind of finish this up. Now I'm going to show you guys the football trick for popping a dent out. Now this fender is pretty much captured. It's sandwiched. You can't get anything in there. I've got a dent right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the needle in our football. I'm going to hook our air hose up. I'm just using a tire pump out of my Challenger. And we'll get this bad boy threaded in. Now, there is an opening. I should be able to jam the football in behind my coolant reservoir. There we go. Now you got to be mindful of where your needle goes as well, because you don't want to break it off in the football. So that might be all right. So I'm going to move you guys over to the side of the fender. We're going to fire up that pump there and see if we can't pop the dent out. Grab our power lead, run this into the truck. Let's flip our pump on and see if this works. It worked on the side of the bed, so it should work back here. Just watch this area. See it start to move? See how that popped out now? I don't know how much PSI football can hold. We got 20 in it. So that's 30. But that did push it out quite a bit, and it took our crease out a little bit. Maybe if I tap this with a body hammer and a little more pressure. Kind of just tap around the stressed areas. Well, we didn't get it all because of this crease down here. This is pretty harsh. It's on a kind of a folded under piece of steel, so it's really not going to want to move. But we did get the major part out, where this was actually socked in there pretty good. But this is a good way to get dents out of something that you can't reach, especially if it's not a compound dent like this one is, where the seam is pushed in. I got this crease here. If that wouldn't be there, we would have pushed this out completely. But it's definitely a way to get to an area you can't get to with a hammer or a bar or a paintless dent repair. Just jam a football in there or any other small ball that would fit in the area. So we're going to let this football leak down, and then I can pull it out of the fender and we'll be good to go. Well, all right. Now that we've got these patch panels in, the rust is off of this side of the truck, which is great. Now, the cab corner came out awesome. Like I said before, where my weld seam is, there's just a little bit of a ripple. Nothing major, but like I said, I just threw a little bit of Bondo on it to keep any of the pinholes that I might have missed just covered up. The bedside looks much better here, but I'm struggling, and I have struggled with this seam because the back side of this bed was dented in. So I popped it out before I cut anything, tried to get it straight, and this aftermarket panel that I got off Amazon didn't quite have the right contour coming off here to match up with that as well as I would like. Now, can I massage it and make it better or make it perfect? Absolutely. That is not an issue of being able to do it. It's just the time that it's going to take to do it. And right now, like I said before, I'm kind of up against the clock. I did, like I mentioned before, have a brake line blow, which turned into replacing all the lines and then bleeding the brakes and all that and yada yada. And that took up basically an entire day after I got done running around gathering parts. So it left me with one day to do the patch panel on the bed and to do the cab corner and that rotted rocker section. So walking up on the truck, if you look down the side, it waves at you more than an American flag in a hurricane. Not that bad, but right here at a weld seam, we gotta smooth it. And then when we get back here at the weld seam, I gotta smooth it. And of course, up here, you can see all my grinding marks where we went through a couple coats of paint and all that. This isn't meant to be perfect. Go, oh my God, look at how good of a job you did. This is meant to get us through to the next step. Getting rid of the rust is going to keep this from corroding more and creating a bigger problem and a bigger project in the future. So getting it done this far, and I did coat the inside, so that's not going to rust, can kind of leave this sit to where I can come back to it, strip this off, and then do final body work on it, which maybe in a few weeks. I still do have to tackle the other side, but that one's just rusty through here. It's going to be much quicker, and the cab corner isn't nowhere near as bad as this side was. So that being said, this is not the final product. However, it does show you that in one day you can at least get a panel replaced, and whether you start doing finish work or just coat it to save it for later, you're already ahead of the game. So I think it looks 10 times better just not having the rust. And once we get into it deeper, when we get into finalizing the body work, we'll get this straightened out, we'll get this smoothed out, we'll get that smoothed out. There's a small ding in the impact strip up here that needs to be pushed out. But all in all, it's quite a bit of progress for, 14 hours worth of work, which is about what it took me jumping around and all that. Plus, now, you can get a dent out with a football. Caveat on that, you might sacrifice a football if you really got to jam it in somewhere tight and fill it up. You might have to pop it to pull it out, but big deal. It saves you a ton of money in dent repair or a bunch of scraped knuckles. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We're going to keep continuing on this truck here and there. We're going to start tackling other things, but I really wanted to get this done and ready for winter. This is primed, it's sealed. Nothing should affect it for the little bit of time it's going to take me to get enough time off and really get it super nice in here to where I can attack this and lay some good plastic body filler on it and get a DA over it, because hand sanding something smooth is awful. Even if you have a sanding block, when you've got to work a contour like this, it's just a lot quicker to have a DA to go after it. So that will be future me's problem on this truck. So there you go, guys. If I could do it, you can do it. Don't be afraid to just attempt it. Worst case scenario, I could have screwed this all up. I had another panel. You just cut a little further out and try again. Yeah, you're wasting money and wire and all this, but it's still a lot cheaper than buying an entire bed or taking it to someone. So why don't you check out the playlist on the rest of Brute Farce and everything that we've done so far, and go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description below. And, well, I guess until next time, remember, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.